Welcome to our presentation over the biggest draft steals and busts. We're going to start off with the MLB. So the first MLB bust we have is Mark Appel. He was drafted in 2013 out of Stanford University by the Astros. Even though he was a great prospect, Appel ended up stepping away from baseball after getting several injuries and never reaching the big leagues. So next we have Brady Aiken. He was drafted in 2014 out of Cathedral Catholic High School in San Diego, California by the Astros. He didn't sign after being the #1 pick. The following year, he was the 17th pick by the Indians. And then he struggled. He struggled every minor league season after that. So next we have Joe Mauer. He was drafted in 2001 out of Cretin Durham High in St. Paul, Minnesota by the Twins. He spent his entire career with the Twins until concussions started taking a toll, and it was easy. He was an easy prospect for the Hall of Fame until a position change made him less valuable. Next, we have Bryce Harper for a steal. He was drafted in 2011 out of the College of Southern Nevada by the Nationals. He was Rookie of the Year in 2012, MVP in 2015, just at 27 years old.
All right, so now we have the NFL, which to start is Johnny Manziel, who was a major bust out of Texas A&M. He was a Heisman Trophy winner, drafted 22 overall to the Cleveland Browns. The fact that he was a bust mostly was due to his off-field related flameout with the Browns. He lasted with the Browns for 2 seasons, and he never lived up to his highly touted hype. Luckily, Cleveland was able to rebound 4 long years later with Baker Mayfield, but we're still not sure how that's going to work out. Since he's been out of the NFL, he played 1 season with the Canadian Football League and 1 with the Alliance of American Football. Just to go along with the fact that the Browns are terrible at drafting, you have a list of players here, all drafted in the first round, who were major busts, going from Trent Richardson, who was 3rd pick and lasted a year, Brandon Weeden, who was drafted 22nd and isn't even hired anymore. And then you have Justin Gilbert, who was drafted at number 8 and a year later was traded for a 6th-round pick. And then Corey Coleman drafted at 15 and then a year later traded for a 7th-round pick. As a steal, we all know this one, Tom Brady. He was selected at the 199th pick. And since then, he has won 6 Super Bowls and 9 Super Bowl appearances. He's won 4 Super Bowl MVPs. You may not like him, but you can't deny the fact that he's done special things, even if he cheated. Then again, the jury is still out on whether the success actually came from Brady or Belichick, but you can't argue with the numbers. And then just to go along with like the best franchises over the past 5 years, you have Kansas City at number 1, obviously with Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Chris Jones. And then you have followed up by the Baltimore Ravens, the Saints, the Cowboys, which the Cowboys, the year that they did draft Prescott, Smith, and Elliott all in the first round and the second round, they were number 1 seeded, but since then they've fallen apart because they're the Cowboys. And then you have the worst NFL franchises over the past 5 years being the Bengals, who obviously always pick in the top 10, the Broncos, who are still not that great, the Eagles, obviously, with their best draft pick being Carson Wentz, who is hurt all the time, and the Texans, who also are terribly managed. And so based off of that, you can tell that obviously the draft, at least in the NFL, affects how teams actually do.
So next we have the MLS. For one of our steals was Matt Keenan in 1990 for Kansas City's Wizards. He was the first pick in his MLS draft, and he was just a very versatile player. So he played 6 out of the 7 seasons. He appeared in 172 games and collected 13 goals in 9. With his 30 appearances, he helped the Wizards in 2000 take home the cup and the Supporters' Shield. Another steal was Eskidrian for DC United in 2003. He scored 10 goals during his regular season and was named MVP Cup after scoring a brace against the Wizards. And then he went on an MLS career and appeared in 125 games with multiple teams before he cut him short of a career. Were like in 1999, Jason Moore for DC United, even the first overall pick in round 1 of 3. United plucked Moore out of an exceptionally weak class, and by 2003, his career was over with just 1 and 11 assists under his belt. And then another bust would be Nicolai for Real Salt Lake. He was thought to be the second coming. At 16, he became the second youngest pick ever. But if you thought a dude, he just like reinvented that, playing in all 8 MLS games before they gave him up in 2008.
Okay, next we have the NBA. And our first steal is Mark Gasol, who got drafted to the LA Lakers in draft position 48. When he was drafted by the Lakers in 2007, it was primarily because of his last name. His brother Paul was tearing it up for the Grizzlies at the time. Mark wasn't viewed too highly, and before playing a single game, he was traded to the Grizzlies for his brother. The swap was viewed as one of the most lopsided in the history of the NBA. This 7-footer was now helped convince us that Memphis may actually have gotten the better end of the deal. Mark used the 2012-2013 season to assert himself as arguably the best center in basketball, winning Defense Player of the Year and giving Memphis a wide range of valued offense contributions. Then in 2019, he was traded to the Toronto Raptors, where he won his first NBA championship. Our next steal is David Lee, who was drafted in 2005 to the New York Knicks. When you watch him play now, it's tough to believe that David Lee was once able to drop all the way to number 30 in the 2005 NBA draft. For all his athletic and defense limitations, he can score the basketball. Perhaps it was because Lee never really showed off that scoring touch at Florida. As a senior, he averaged only 13.6 points and 9 rebounds per game. And he was already 21 years old, so there didn't seem to be too much room for growth. Well, that was wrong. During his second season in the NBA, with a limited role in the New York Knicks offense, Lee actually led the league in offense rating thanks to his 60% shooting from the field. And an NBA bust was Darko Malik. He's known as the guy drafted after LeBron James and before 3 All-Stars. Darko had maturity issues and was an NBA journeyman, making stops in Orlando, Memphis, New York, Minnesota, and Boston after Detroit. Every 7-foot European prospect gets pegged as the next Dirk, and none of them have even come close to Dirk's status. Detroit was more in a position to be drafting for need, as it was one of the absolute best teams in the league at the time. Malik was drafted to be groomed for the future, as he was barely 18 years old when he was selected. Detroit went on to win a title in his rookie season, even though he played sparingly. Our last NBA bust was Kwame Brown. Brown was the first high school player taken number 1 overall in NBA history. The big man suffered the wrath of Michael Jordan in his twilight career stunt with the Wizards. As a number 1 pick, more is expected of you than a career average of 6.6 points per game. At 7 feet tall, Kwame can barely palm a basketball. His immaturity and lack of fundamental basketball skills plagued him early in his career. He was drafted on potential instead of actual talent, when just goes to show you that not any 7-footer can develop into a superstar.
So in conclusion, Teams with draft success are title contenders year after year for the most part. Thus, franchises cannot rely on free agency as well. They must rely on the draft and bringing in the best talent possible at their draft pick. There is still no rhyme or reason to why certain picks are busts or steals. It just lands on each player's characteristics from motives, work ethic, personality, team fit, and many more little details that franchises try to define before they draft a player. So, in the discussion questions. One, does the draft have the most effect on teams that win titles? Or do you think it's something else? Two, which teams do you think are the best at their player drafts? And also, which teams do you think are the worst at drafting players? And there's our citations.